Welcome to the discussion today around profiles as marketing tools, not consulting or coaching tools. This is, I think, one of the most powerful reasons to use a profile. So let's talk about the problem. We're talking to independent management consultants and coaches. What's the problem? Well, you could argue it's lack of deliverables or lack of retention, I'm not very efficient, or I have a lack of revenue and growth. It's the last one that the majority of consultants we poll, 98%, say is the big problem. They don't make enough money. They're not making enough sales. What's the cause behind that? As any good consultant or coach does. What's causing it? Well, some could argue that, it's because you're undercharging or your market's too small. There's just not enough people to sell to. Some could say that it's too crowded. There's too many other consultants. I have poor deliverables. I don't make any money because I sell things that suck. Or I have an ineffective sales and marketing process. Highlighted here in the red circles are the two answers that we feel coming back from that polling group from approximately 6,000 independent consultants out there. There is a problem with overcrowding, and it's getting worse, and I'll explain it. And the biggest problem, 98% also say that they feel they have an ineffective sales and marketing process. So 100% agreement between not getting enough money and not feeling like I know how to sell well enough. So let's go with the first problem, too crowded. It absolutely is. And that results in a lack of differentiation. It's hard to stand out. It's hard to get known. Okay? According to the Bureau of Labor and Statistics in the United States, and this is true of most developed worlds, the single fastest growing job occupation is independent consultant. It is projected at 83% growth. And by 2016, there will be 800,000 independent business consultants or coaches in the United States alone. So yes, it's already crowded. 2013, at the time of this recording, it's approximately 500,000 coaches now, and it's growing. So the solution is you're going to need a process that positions you far apart from the competition, and there's a lot more of them to come. You need a better way to stand apart from the crowd. Let's talk about that second problem, ineffective sales and marketing processes. Well, the solution is that you need to stop borrowing the best practices from the wrong profession, a dedicated process that was designed exclusively for consultants and coaches, and that's what you're going to learn in here today. So let's dig a little bit deeper. There's four key aspects here. It's the dichotomy of independent consulting, I call it. Selling is a full-time job. And then the last two I think are the most important. Selling is not right for who you are, and selling is not right for what you do. So let's explore each of these. I call it the consulting or coaching dichotomy. It's the problem with being both the seller and that which is being sold. See, most professional salespeople aren't selling themselves. I know what you're saying. Well, isn't it true, the great old mantra that the first thing a salesperson has to do is sell themselves? Not really. In the end, they're not selling themselves. Yes, they have to develop a relationship, favorable attention, and rapport, but in the end, I'm not buying that salesperson as much as I'm buying a solution or a product or a widget or something that they're actually selling, which is manufactured by their company or delivered by somebody else in their company. It switches when you are actually the goods that are being bought. And then you have to try to sell those as well, because you put on two different hats, the authority or the expert who is being bought and the salesperson who's trying to sell it. There's a dichotomy there, and I spell it that way because it kills us. Second, that same problem creates what I call cyclical hell. I sell, and I'm filling the funnel, and I'm doing my sales and marketing, and I get some business to the bottom of the funnel. I end up delivering it. So now I spend X period of time delivering the consulting or the training or the coaching that I sold. But while I'm doing that, nobody's on top of the funnel filling the sales funnel. And so I go through these crests and troughs, these ebbs and flows of I've got lots of business, I have zero, and I have to start all over again. Every good sales company has a dedicated sales force that lives on top of the funnel, and somebody else is dealing with delivering everything that comes out the bottom. That's the cyclical hell and the problem with the traditional sales methodologies that you're learning. Second, selling is a full-time job. It's not a collateral duty. You don't just pick it up. Effort equals results. So if I treat selling like a side item, if let's say I spend 50% of my week sales and marketing, and 50% of my week delivering actual services that are generating revenue, well, if I put 50% effort into sales and marketing, I should only expect 50% of the results. That's the problem. And pros invest years and 110% of their focus in becoming professional salespeople, honing their ability. Many people mistakenly assume, well, universities don't give degrees in sales, so it can't be that hard. I can pick it up. I'll read a book. I'll just wing it. I'll do what others have done to me when they've been selling to me. You can't do that. It's ineffective and it doesn't work. Treating it like a full-time job when you're giving it part-time credence. That's one of the reasons why sales are so low. 99% of consultants we poll tell us that's their biggest problem. The other reason is that selling is not right for who you are. We all have neural networks in our brain, and this controls what talents we have based on our decision-making styles, why we're motivated to use those talents, and how we prefer to use those talents. And I can tell you from having polled over 1 million individuals around the world that the profiles, the decision-making style, the natural talents and strengths and weaknesses of a professional salesperson are drastically different, almost the opposite in many cases, than those talents and skills and strengths that make a great coaching professional. They're far apart.
Hey, what's your name? Helen. That's nice. You look like a Helen. Helen, we're both in sales. Let me tell you why I suck as a salesman. Let's say I go into some guy's office. Let's say he's even remotely interested in buying something. Well, then I get all excited. I'm like, Jojo, the idiot circus boy with a pretty new pet. The pet is my possible sale. Oh, my pretty little pet. I love you. So I stroke it, I pet it, and massage it. I love it. I love my little naughty pet. You're naughty. And then I take my naughty pet and I go. Oh! I killed it! I killed my sale. That's when I blow it.
And that's a great example of how a lot of us feel as expert consultants or coaches when we try to become the expert salesperson. It's not right for what we do. We're borrowing best practices from the wrong profession. I mean, you're an authority, you're an expert, you're a trusted advisor. You have to think of yourself more like a physician, financial expert, an advisor, an attorney. What would you feel? How would you feel if you received a phone call and, honey, there's a Dr. Smith on the phone, and the local cardiac surgeon down the street just opened his new practice, and he's calling and saying, hey, I just wanted to talk to you. How many consultants or coaches have ever attempted cold calling? What do you think that does to your image in the mind of your prospect as the expert, the authority, the trusted advisor? See, the act of selling creates the wrong image. Now, it's not fair. It's not even true. But most people on the street stop and poll and ask, what's your opinion on salespeople? It's not going to be a very positive light. Again, I've been a professional salesperson most of my life. It's absolutely not what I've encountered in the majority of cases. But the Herb Tarlicks from the old WKRP in Cincinnati television show have created an image that I see somebody starting to sell. This is the psychological image I get. So the acts that I take in trying to grow my practice, if they look like I'm selling, this is the image I create. Back to that dichotomy. I mean, case in point, why do you sell? And why do you think professional salespeople sell? See, you sell so you can then get to do what you love to do, your full-time job, which is to consult or coach. Professional salespeople sell so they can sell. Make sense? Get my point? You're selling so you can do what you love to do. You're not done once you're finished with the sale. Then your work gets to begin. Professional salesperson, they make the sale, they're done. Objective complete. So the solution involves one of the things we learned in a 7-year scientific study. We looked at 197,000 individuals in 23 countries or so around the world, and we were looking to understand of all these traits that we could measure, were there any that correlated with top performance universally? So any industry, any job, any level of experience. Did we find anything that correlated? And the only two were self-awareness and authenticity. The last two here on your screen. Self-awareness being defined as those who performed best across the board statistically with no regard for what industry or role they were in, had greater self-awareness. They knew what their natural talents were for. They knew what their strengths were for. They also knew what their weaknesses were as well. And then they were also the most authentic. The two highest scores that correlated were self-awareness and authenticity. So they had much higher authenticity than anybody else, any of the lower performers. And what that means is they knew what they were good at and not good at, and the way they sought to achieve their objectives factored in their awareness of what they were good and not good at. In other words, they knew they weren't great strategic planners, so they didn't allow their success depend on their ability to be great strategic planners. See, the conventional wisdom is, let's figure out what we're not good at and fix it. The best performers, surprisingly, and not really. I mean, in real life, this isn't surprising. We know people who are tops in their market and the tops in their jobs, and we know they've got tons of things they're not great at. It's not that they have better talents than anybody else, and what we've learned in the study is that's untrue. It's they have the same amount of talents and non-talents, strengths and weaknesses. It's that they do a better job of knowing them, self-awareness, and then they do a much better job of setting a goal and going after it, having a job and doing the work in a way that doesn't depend on their non-talents. They're much more authentic. So you can read the findings of this study in a book called What's Your Genius? And here we're just showing that we broke the individuals, 197,000, into one of 5 categories. And the blue bar represents self-awareness and authenticity is the green. These were the only 2 out of over 100 that correlated positively. The higher the performance, the higher these 2 went. So what's that mean to you? Well, as the consultant or the coach, you've got to change your belief system. You got to figure out, I'm a professional coach. My greatest talents are for helping others as a consultant or being a coach, being an independent consultant, not being a great salesperson. So those of you that have said, well, in order to be that consultant or coach, I first must be a great salesperson, even though I'm not great at it or I don't enjoy it, or even if you do enjoy it and you're great at it, it still creates the wrong image because you were a star salesperson in your previous career selling something else. Now you have to sell you as the authority. It doesn't work, so you've got to change the belief system that you have if you want to change your results. Your role is not a professional salesperson. You need to stop selling, and instead I'm going to teach you how to start consulting. See, the simple truth is people say, well, I have to sell if I'm going to stay alive in my business because I'm the only person here. Not true. You have to get new clients. But have we ever asked the question, is there a way to get new clients wherein you must not have to sell, you don't have to sell to them, you have to put on your sales cap? It's the same objective. I want to get a new client. Most of us have always thought, well, the only path to that is to go out, be a salesperson, land them, close them, pitch them, and do all the things a salesperson does to turn them into a client, and then I can go to work. It's actually not true. There's another route to get new clients where you can actually just be the consultant, and we're going to teach you that here today. Using profiles, I'll show you how you can actually use the profile to get the client as a consultant, not as a salesperson. So you need to lose the sales hat. You need to lose the tie-down questions. You need to lose all the pitch books. Okay? You need to shift from the old sales prospecting pitch to a consultative advising. And this is even beyond consultative selling. Okay? This is a whole new way of just getting rid of that selling piece altogether. Why? Not because I'm a liberal and I'm worried that somebody's not good at something and everybody needs to be equal. And nothing to do with that. This is sheer results discussion. We know from all of the consultants we've worked with and have studied the best that that doesn't work. You have to take this new consultative approach. We call it the diagnostic sales formula. Okay, and this is the actual formula here. Power source plus causative metric plus diagnostic profile equals a solution. And the solution is you getting their business as a consultant or a coach. That's where the money comes into play. So we'll explain each one of these as we go through here. Another place you can go check is my new book called The Profitable Consultant. You can find it at theprofitableconsultant.com, online, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or anywhere. I pitch it here because it's important for the reason that we can only cover so much in this video. And inside this book, 250 some odd pages, we go in depth into exactly how you can achieve the diagnostic sales process, overcome the biggest hurdles, and do it without having to become the great salesperson. Okay? But let's give you the overviews here. Inside that book, you'll learn the diagnostic sales process, which is 5 simple steps. Step 1, induce them, prospects, to come to you. I'm going to unpack each one of these. Step 2, establish a concrete power source. Step 3, advise them on causative metrics or advance a hypothetical cause. Step 4, recommend diagnostic profiling. And step 5, negotiate the appropriate solution. This is where you make your recommendation. So we're going to dig into each one of these. But again, it's the power source, the causative metrics, and the diagnostic profiles. In reality, these are the 3 tactical things you're doing. Step 1 comes before this. That's the marketing that we'll teach you how to do a little bit and more in the book. And it's inducing them to come to you. And then when they do come to you, you'll start by getting their power source, talking about what could be causing it, diagnostically profiling it with some sort of tool. Using tools, as again the topic here is. And then all of that's done for free before you actually get to the sale, which is the solution when you actually make your proposal. So unbeknownst to all of you, you've actually experienced the diagnostic sales process. You just didn't realize it. If you've ever been to a physician, that is, and I'm assuming most of you have, you've seen this at work. So let's dig in a little bit with the physician. You go to a doctor's office and they say, all right, what hurts? Now, you were induced to come to them because of a reputation, because of the positioning, because of a referral, all the things that we'll learn in inducement as far as getting them to come to you. You did not go to that physician because you saw their practice on the back of a bus. Most likely. I would doubt that you did. I hope you don't. You did not go to that physician because they sent you a flyer in the mail, a 5% off on your next angiogram. You did not go to that practice or doctor because you saw a banner on the website somewhere. It got a spam or a cold call. So when you were induced to go to that physician in the ways that we're going to teach you to induce people to come to you. As a trusted advisor, as an authority, as a positioned person, and when you need their help, they're the ones you turn to. And then when you went to them, they said, what hurts? And they established a power source. I call it the power source, but it's really the problem. The reason I call it a power source is because if you're going to have a call to action at the end, action requires energy, and you need to have power for energy. And so the problem is what's going to power that action, the call to action you'll give them later. And then they said, well, I think the possible causes, advance a hypothetical cause, could be, a meniscal tear, let's just say. My knee hurts. Sounds like it could be a meniscal tear. I don't know. Let's do a profile and find out. Let's do some diagnostics, like an MRI in their case. And instead of them selling you all of these steps, and there's a sequence, they have to flow in order. Instead of this physician getting you to take something from them, like a typical salesperson, I'm going to present something, I'm going to pitch it, I'm going to demonstrate it, and then I'm going to make my pitch, and I'm going to get you to take something from me. Their process, the one you'll be now practicing, I hope, gets the prospect to ask them to give them something. So when you use this, there's a huge mind shift. Instead of you going out and seeking to find someone who will take something from you, hey, I want you to consider my sales training. I want you to buy my coaching. I want you to buy my strategic planning, customer service, hiring, whatever. This process will get them to say, what do you recommend? It will get them to ask you to give them something. And then you're being the consultant. All you're doing then is saying, well, since you asked, my recommendation would be. And that's a huge, huge difference. Let's dig deep into each of the individual pieces of the diagnostic sales process. So step number 1, induce them to come to you. The key to effective marketing is to establish your authority, your credibility, trust. Think like the physician. Again, they didn't cold call you. They didn't do any of those negative things. Then you're going to get that power source. Once they do come to you, we'll dig deeper into these yet still, you're going to say, well, what hurts? What's the pain, the problem, the desire, the want, the need? All kinds of different programs talk about it in different ways. All the same thing. I put it all under the heading of power source because to me it is the power that's going to drive any action I get when it comes to them accepting my proposal for consulting or coaching. Also has a quality and a quantity. Quantity typically is, I think, dollar signs and heart signs. So when I establish the power source, I need to know how big is it? Is this a little problem? Or is this the thing that's keeping you up at 2 o'clock at night? Because I want the latter. I want the biggest problem they have. And I need to know what financial impact it's having on them. If at all possible, I want to establish some stake in the ground of, is this costing you $20,000 a year, Mr. Smith, or $2 million? And it's very important to try to get the emotions of this problem, okay? The power source needs to be fleshed out emotionally because the biggest percentage of the decision making in purchasing is emotional. And I need to understand what's the stress that this problem is causing the prospect. What are the emotions associated with it? Frustration, fear, insecurity, so on and so forth. Once I hear their problem, once I hear the power source, I'm going to put forth a hypothetical cause. Now, you're a consultant or a coach. There's not that many problems out there for you to hear. They all are unique in their own little way. But in the end, it's really, these people can't get along. Our strategic planning is really, nil. We're losing sales. We have high turnover. There's a limited number of problems. So in short order, you'll be able to quickly develop a library of likely causes. This is not staking, everything on this is the actual cause. It's a hypothetical cause, possible cause. And what this does, when the physician does this, they say, okay, so it sounds like it might be a meniscal tear. Now, they're not saying I'm absolutely sure it is. They're saying it could be. And this provides hope. Think back to your last doctor's visit. Some nagging problem you had, some pain, something that was getting in your way, enough that it caused you to reach out to the physician. And you don't know what it is. And they said, it sounds to me like a meniscal tear. And all of a sudden there's hope. Ah, wow. You know, it sounds like you might know what's going on. The second bullet, they make themselves, much more credible. They've just reinforced their authority in your mind. So this is the same thing you can do, Sales are down. Well, one of the number one reasons why sales may be down is because a salesperson doesn't have some of the key traits of the best salespeople. For example, they're not aggressive, closers. They don't prospect very well. They have call reluctance. They're not self-starters. They don't handle rejection well. All the things that we all know traditionally may be traits that a great salesperson has that this person may not. I'm just advancing a hypothetical cause at this point, creating a question in the prospect's mind. Well, I wonder if that's the case. What this does is open the door to say, well, I don't know if it's the case or not. Why don't we find out? Think back to the physician. Sounds like it might be a meniscal tear. Great, doc. When do we operate? No, 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 she says. It could be. It sounds like my money would probably be on the fact that it's likely a meniscal tear, but I'm never going to prescribe treatment on just a hunch. You're going to say the same thing. Oh, I mean, my guess is that they may not have some of the key traits of a great salesperson, like I just mentioned, but I'm not going to prescribe sales training because I don't know if that's the case or not. And that's one of the big differences in this process that most unprofessional sales consultants or coaches, the people, even the great ones that do have a sales background, miss. The moment the person says, oh, well, I have poor sales. Well, that's just jump right to the solution. Well, when was the last time you trained your salespeople? Too soon, too far. Just like the physician saying, you have pain? Well, have you ever had knee surgery? You haven't? Oh, well, you need knee surgery. I mean, there's no difference. I think we tend to forget that we should treat the client like a patient. There's the same amount of gravity behind the decisions that we're making as a physician makes. We're talking about the individual's business, their profession, their life. Okay? Maybe not physical, but in every other way. We're dealing with very heady topics, and we need to not just say, well, here's an opening where the guy said he has problems with sales. Let's sell him sales training. You're doing what's the equivalent of medical malpractice, and we would call it consultative malpractice. You don't know that that's the problem. So you've put forth a hypothetical cause, and now you have to actually diagnose that. And you do that by using any of the profiles out there on the market. Our profiles, we've got the DISC index, the values index, and I recommend you consider the organizational health check as well. What that means is, well, it sounds like they don't have these traits, Mr. Smith, but I don't know for sure. And I would never take action on that without being certain that it's because of these missing traits that that individual is suffering so much with their sales. So why guess when we can know? Why don't you give me a profile? It's a 10-minute profile. It's free. Does it online. Results come right back to me, and you and I can go over them, and let's just see if that's the case. And I don't charge for this, so I have never had anybody turn me down. I can remember one time, I think, but the person wasn't a qualified lead, and they just were, curmudgeony. I mean, they didn't buy into anything. So step 4 is let's define that and actually profile them with a disc and make sure that they don't have those traits. Now, going backwards, I need to, when I'm at the advancing a hypothetical cause stage, I need to make sure I'm advancing traits or talents or skills or aptitudes or attributes or whatever you're looking at that I can measure. It wouldn't do me any good to say, well, maybe they're not great salespeople because, they had a horrible childhood. Well, I can't measure their childhood. I can't define what's good or bad about it. So it's a moot point. It's irrelevant. It does me no good. But if as long as I put forth a potential cause of their problem, being something that I can measure in one of the profiles I have access to, then I'm good to go. And I'm not, again, pouring it in concrete and saying it will show that they don't have these traits. I'm saying it sounds to me like they may have some deficit here. Let's find out. And this is true of any role that I've ever found. There are traits behind leaders, there are best traits behind managers, those that affect customer service, communication, conflict, you name it. So you then say, well, let's give a profile to the individual and see if I'm right. And I do. I take that playful approach. I'm not sure. Let's find out. Doesn't cost you anything, and take 10 minutes for your sales guy to let us know. So you give them the link to the profile. And the final step is you get the results of the profile, you come back, you go over the debrief, a short debrief. You're not going to do a 1 or a 2 hour debrief. You go over the results with your key prospect. This is the leader of the company, the executive in charge. And you show them the results, just like the physician bringing the MRI images back into the room and saying, well, see this? Lo and behold, you do have a meniscal tear. Or, see this? You don't have a meniscal tear, but your lateral collateral ligament is torn. There will be something in those profiles that you'll be able to connect to that problem. Somewhere. I preferably use an advanced insights profile so I get all 3, because the odds are, wider net, I'm going to catch more potential causes. So I'll have some in there when I go back. But I go over the results of that profile, and here's where the magic happens. What happens when you're in that physician's office and you say, my knee hurts? They say, sounds like a meniscal tear. When do we operate? No. We need to make sure first. Go ahead and get an MRI, diagnostic profile. And you get the MRI, you come back, she sits down, she goes over the results, and you go, see this? Yeah, no, you have a meniscal tear. What's the first thought in your head? Now that it's made concrete, it's manifest in reality right there in front of me with my own eyes, you go, how do we fix it? 99% of the time, that's what you're going to think. Okay, I believe you. You were right, or close to it. Don't really care, because in the end, you did find a cause. What do we do to fix it, Doc? And that is switching the prospect from the old sales mode of getting them to take something from you, turning it on its head and getting them to ask you to give them something. It's at that point right there where this diagnostic sales process, everything flows to get them to the point where your prospect, not client, still haven't sold them. Prospect says, what do you recommend? That's step 5 where you say, well, let's just tell you, what I recommend. You negotiate the appropriate solution. It's nothing more than your personal recommendation on what you think will solve their problem, what will cause or cure the cause of their problem. Sales training now is where you start talking about that. But maybe it's personal coaching. Maybe it's leadership training. All depends on the topic and the content. So those are the 5 steps. Okay? Inducing them to come to you, establishing a concrete power source, advancing a hypothetical cause, recommending the diagnostic profile to see if you're right or not, and then going over the results, waiting for them to give you the buy sign of, well, okay, so what do you recommend? and then you simply make your recommendation. You don't have to be a salesperson in step 5. You're not aggressively closing them. There's no tricky tie-down questions. Forget that. Screw it. If you've ever been taught that, throw it away. Okay? None of the puppy dog close, the Benjamin Franklin close, they'll all kill you. I like to say, and if you look at the first letters of each of these 5 steps, I like to say that if you do this, if I do this well, I earn the business. See, because that's part of the problem. A lot of the times, I don't earn the business if I just go out and ask them to buy something. I haven't earned that. I haven't given before I've received. I've not followed the rules of the psychology of selling, which we'll cover. So it sounds like a lot more work. Maybe it is, but 99% of the consultants say they don't have enough revenue. Well, maybe it's time to work harder to get the sale. But I would say that that's not true. I would say it's that they need to work smarter. So let's go over that psychology of sales. There's 4 basic truths that really cause this to work. 1, you need to rewrite the ABCs of selling. The old school ways, always be closing. New school, always be coaching or insert consulting. It's up to you, based on which your practice primarily delivers. That's the problem. Hey, I'm going to go out and be a salesperson. Read a book, spin selling, selling to Vito, whatever. I need to go out and close. That's what I got to do. Well, here's the problem with that.
Because we're adding a little something to this month's sales contest. As you all know, first prize is a Cadillac Eldorado. Anybody want to see second prize? Second prize is a set of steak knives. Third prize is you're fired. A, B, C. A, always B, B, C, closing. Always be closing. Always be closing. AIDA, attention, interest, decision, action. Attention, do I have your attention? Interest, are you interested? I know you are, because it's or walk. You close or you hit the bricks. Decision, have you made your decision for Christ? And action.
And this is the problem. The old school selling mentality is still very much an aggressive, take your knee off your throat so they can say yes kind of sales role. And it doesn't work. You've got to change always be closing to always be consulting. This reminds you to burn the sales hat, keep the role of consultant and coach. Rule number 2, the psychology of sales behind why the diagnostic sales process works, is the more you connect, the more you collect. Now, this sounds very sales oriented, and it is, but it's very true. The better the relationship I develop with an individual, the more likely I am to get them as a client. End of story. The more time I invest, the harder I work to earn the business, EARN, the more likely I get to know them. They get to know me. We develop favorable rapport and attention. I establish influence. I'm creating the role of the trusted advisor, yada, yada, yada. But I have to work at that. Showing up and throwing up way too early and saying, hi, can I have a few minutes to talk to you about my wonderful sales training program? Hey, you've got a minute? I'd like to talk to you about my executive coaching and what I do and how wonderful it can be. Gone. Those days are gone. You have to connect with the individual, and that's just a basic truth of sales. Truth number 3, people buy for their reasons, not yours. Now, using profiles has an absolute collateral side effect that is awesome, and we'll talk about it in a little bit here, but there's a whole other video, selling to the 7 buying motives and the 4 buying styles that you need to watch on the Intermetrics website. Contact your customer support person if you haven't found it. I'm talking about using profiles to concretely diagnose the cause of the problem. And I do all of this before I even make a presentation about what I want to sell. This is all before my recommendation. I give them profiles for free. But side effect, if I can get the profile on the individual, and it's not always the case, maybe it's their salesperson, so I'm giving a profile to the salesperson, but I'll always recommend, hey, why don't you take one as well? What the heck? Maybe we can see if there's a conflict potential between you two, or I can help you understand how to tailor your communication better. So if I can get one on the actual decision maker, which makes sense if it's leadership or cultural or conflict with them or teams that they're involved in, most of the time I can manage to get the decision maker to take the profiles as well. If I do that, then before I have to make my presentation, before we get to the point when Mrs. Smith says, so what do you recommend? I know the 7 buying motives, which is really the 7 values, and I know her buying style, which is based on her disc. Because it's incredibly different to sell to a high D with an economic driver than it is to sell to a high S with an altruistic driver, or any combination of the 7 and the 4. Absolutely worlds apart as to how I position the value of my product or solution and the actual way I communicate it behaviorally. So it's a truth. They buy for their reasons, not mine. And knowing their reasons, I can't cover them all. I need to know their reasons. Another huge reason why this process is so effective. And lastly, this is probably the most true statement I think I could ever state when it comes to how do I develop new business as a consultant. He or she who identifies the cause of the problem gets to fix it. And this is a power-packed statement, and you really need to stop and think about this, okay? Majority of us would want to go out, find somebody at a networking event, say, hey, can I have a time, an hour of your time next week to take you for lunch? You and I both know I'm really going to do a sales pitch. I might even blatantly say, I'd love to talk to you about, our consulting practice, what it does, and how we might be able to help your company. If I'm lucky enough to get that time, I show up and I do the old show up and throw up, like we used to say at J&J. I start vomiting up all the features and the functions and the benefits of everything we offer, and here's the testimonials and endorsements and why it's unique and my unique value proposition, and I'm just overwhelming the individual. And I wonder why I struggle to get business. But the person who identifies the cause of the problem before they present a solution will be the one who gets to fix it. If you understand this, then you understand the power behind being able to go out and for free give profiles on an unlimited basis to anybody you want and debrief it with them and show them this is what's causing that salesperson's problem. This is what's causing the conflict between those two people because I profiled them both and they're drastically different profiles. Huge conflict potential. This is why your team is not working together. This is why there's probably not a great strategic plan because the entire executive team has a huge deficit in all the strategic skills like conceptual thinking, big picture planning, so on and so forth. I can show that cause to the problem, which working backwards means I identify their problem, and then I show them the cause to it. 99% of the time, they will give me that business. And it's the same as if the physician shows you the MRI and says, here's your meniscal tear, and you were to get up and say, thanks a lot, doc, and then walk out of the office, and then go grab the phone book and try to figure out which physician you can find to actually fix your knee. That would be asinine. Nobody would do it. Unless the physician says, I'm a diagnostician, I don't do surgery. But even then, you would say, well, please tell me who you know who can fix it. If they identify the cause, they're going to be the first ones in line to be fixing it. And it's the same here. If I can go out and identify the cause of a prospect's problem, I am always going to be the first in line to get to fix it. And that's where I make my money. Not selling them a $150 or a $300 profile, not spending an hour or two working through with them, meeting about the cause and the problem. That's the sales call. I know we're not calling it a sales call, but in the sales world, that's the sales call. And I don't know a salesperson who gets paid to make sales calls. They get paid when they get results. The sales call is the effort you put into it. So, if you want to say, hey, I'm not going to give away a profile. I'm not going to go spend an hour or two of my valuable time helping this person identify the cause of their problem and give them all this value for free. Great, go for it. Try to sell that for $5,000. But it's an old school mentality. It's a restrictive mindset. Okay? It's not an expansive mindset. And it doesn't result in the best sales. I'm here to tell you it will not. You might make some money. You might consider yourself making good money. If you're making big 6 figures or 7 figures, call me if that's what you're doing and you're still getting it. I'd be interested because I've never met one. Go out, identify a problem, seek to find the cause to that problem. They will ask you how to fix it, which is your open door to go in and make your proposal, and you're going to get that proposal accepted if it's at all rational. So it's all about a shift in objectives. You need to shift from seeking to go sell in the morning to go find people to help solve. Where's somebody with a problem? Let's sit down and figure out what's causing it. And the business will follow.
I never did introduce myself. Del Griffith, American Light and Fixture, Director of Sales, Shower Curtain Ring Division. I sell shower curtain rings. Best in the world.
How do you do, man? My name is Del Griffith. I'm with the American Light and Fixture Company, Jewelry Division, and I've got the deal of a lifetime for you. Do you have a minute? This is your Diane Sawyer autographed earring. You ever watch 60 Minutes? Thanks. This is Czechoslovakian ivory. It's $5. Great. This is your Walter Cronkite moon ring. Thank you. They are filled with helium, so they're very light. Thank you. This is an autographed Daryl Strawberry earring. You could pass for 18 or 19.
That's what we don't want to be. That's what the old mentality of selling leads us towards, trying to be pitchmen, trying to twist what it is to everybody that we think they need. We don't know what they need. The best salespeople are really receptive and try to figure it out. We don't need to do that. The idea is to go out, change your mindset, dig into the profitable ideas here, the diagnostic sales process, and follow step one. So that's where it begins, inducing them to come to you. It's effective marketing is about establishing authority, credibility, and trust, as we talked about. So you need to rethink maybe how you're doing marketing now. I don't know how you're marketing, but if you're doing sales-based marketing, which is flyers and brochures and websites that talk all about you, then you need to rethink that and figure how doctors do it. They position themselves as the authority. They position themselves as the thought leaders. Okay, sales-based marketing doesn't work. It's marketing at people. It's interruption-based marketing, as Seth Godin and Donnie Deutsch call it, and it's dead. It erodes the authority, the credibility, and the trust. Again, it might work for some other professional sales divisions, but not for this industry. Sales-based marketing ignores buyer psychology 101. You must give before you receive. It pushes people away. It automatically raises defenses. They're suspicious. They see that sales guy with the white patent leather belt and matching shoes coming towards them, and they shut down. But we're going to talk about education-based marketing, which it's a process where you give before you receive. Okay? It establishes reliability, credibility, authority, and trust. And more importantly, I think it's authentic to your actual role. You're a consultant, you're a coach. You're good at educating. You're good at sharing. You're good at helping. And so step one is about not pushing the rope. It's about inducing them to come to you. And we're not talking about the diagnostic sales process steps 2 through 5. We're going back and digging into the deepest level. Before you even meet that individual, you must induce them to come to you. Cold calls don't work. Flyers don't work. Banners on websites don't work. Networking events where you try to grab their attention and take them to lunch doesn't work. But speaking works. Speaking with authority on a specific problem to an industry. Writing about that problem, a problem, pick one, there's a million. You can record your article that you wrote or the presentation that you can give as a podcast. You can network and you can present at networking events, not about who you are and what you do, but about a problem. See, the marketing that you're doing is inducing them to come to you. So you're getting up and being seen as the authority in front of your prospects. That's what you're trying to do. Not get up in front of your prospects and pitch them, because it doesn't work. And referrals is another way to use authority, working with a good network, getting others to refer you as the authority. That's social proof. It stands taller than anything else. So you need to create an education-based message. Pick a topic, pick an industry, pick a problem. Okay? Lack of poor leadership. The last article I wrote was titled, "If They Follow Him at All, It's Only Out of Morbid Curiosity." Now, it's an old joke that I got way back many, many years ago from somebody else. I forget who or where. But it's a great title for an article about poor leadership. And then you can write that article about a problem, and you can address the problem and talk about the cause, and you can turn that into a presentation and be giving it at Chamber of Commerce meetings as a little keynote or a 1 hour. You can turn it into a workshop. You can put it up on a website You can actually turn presentations into movies through Mac or PowerPoint and post it on the internet. You're watching one that was created on Keynote on a Mac. And you just press a button to record the slideshow, do your voiceover, and it puts it out in a movie form, and you're watching the output of that. You can post it on your website, submit it to article submission sites, submit it to presentation sharing sites. The actual presentation you made, there's sites out there like ShareCare that you can post to, and it puts your presentation out there. Present it live. You can speak on it. You can even write it up in a nice little 2 or 3 column article, make it look more like a magazine or a journal article, and don't fold it up, but put it in a nice large folder and mail it as an educational piece and part of your education series to executives at organizations. It's about the only cold mailing that I think works. Direct mail doesn't work anymore. It's 0.5% return. So 1, 2, and 3, pretty self-evident, but submitting to article submission sites. At places like ezinearticles.com. You can go up here and post your article, and millions of people every month, not year, month, millions of people come to this site searching for articles under different topics. So business, leadership, management, sales. You can go to successimo.com. It's another site. There's a bunch of them. All places you can submit that one article you wrote. It's called repurposing. You can take the presentation you made, Keynote or PowerPoint, depending on whether you're a PC or a Mac person, and you could submit it to slideshare.net. You can post the entire presentation. Again, people come here and search it. And the more places you have it out there, the more likely you're going to find your prospect coming across it. It increases traffic to your own website. And you're all part of this marketing process designed to induce the prospect to come to you. Authorstream.com, another place you can post your presentation. You can present it live. Go to a chamber of commerce. They're always looking for people to speak, as long as it's not a sales pitch. Put a webinar together on your own website. Partner with a local bank or service provider, and they can go to their network, and you can put on a little 1-hour workshop where you'll provide free educational content on how to improve leadership in the banking industry or small business or whatever their target market is. You can't make it a sales pitch. You can join networking events, and most networking events are looking for educational content on a monthly basis for every one of their meetings, like BNI or Vistage, and you can speak there. Take the exact same topic that you picked, poor leadership, and print it up, mail it directly to associations of organizations, and they'll share it with all of their downline. So you can go to infoplease.com, and there's a list of all the societies and associations in the entire United States, the UK, other big countries have similar sites to this. And you can get the mailing list here and mail it out and say, next time you're having a convention or a conference, if you're interested, I'd love to present this educational topic on improving leadership in legal trade. I'd love to present it too, because I'm mailing it to small business and manufacturers. I'd love to speak to your next convention in small manufacturing business owners. Wikipedia.org is another place you can go to find a list of industry trade groups in the United States. I believe this site actually does click over and have a UK version as well. EU will have its own version of associations. MarketingSource.com, another great place where I can find all those directories. All right. 60,000 different organizations, 98,000 different executives. I could be mailing to the ones that are most optimal for me. An education article on improving effective leadership. So repurposing it is you take that one topic, you build it, you share it as an article, as a presentation, as a webinar, as a workshop, as a speech, as a presentation. You don't want to have to rewrite that 8, 9 different ways. You can take one article, put it out there in 9 different places, like I just mentioned, and then you drastically increase traffic to your website, drastically increase people that are coming to your webinars. You're establishing the authority. You're being seen as you speak and present, either live or virtually through a webinar, by your prospects. It takes work, but again, I said you have to earn the sale. If you think you can put up a website, go to some networking events, find a human, go grab their hand, shake it, and say, "Hi, can I sell you something?" You're going to be along with the other 99% of the consultants we polled, answering the question of my biggest problem right now is lack of revenue. It's not the economy. Don't think it's the economy. Don't think it's anything outside. It's the fact that everybody's become way too savvy for old sales techniques, even in just the last 10 years. So build one educational article, repurpose the hell out of it, and then repeat. What's another topic? Well, I happen to work with team building and I also specialize in banking industry, automotive, healthcare, technology. I don't care. You know what your specialties are. You know what you're good at. Pick one topic, turn it into 9, get it out there, repeat, and just keep going. Once you've induced that person to come to you, once they've been at the event where you were speaking, they were on your webinar, they read your article and they contacted you, they saw your presentation online, they heard your podcast, somebody referred them, okay? Once they come to you, that's where you start step 2. And you find one-on-one time where we can talk and you establish that concrete power source. Be as specific as possible, okay? The greater the power, the greater the action, so you don't want their 3rd or 4th or 5th. You want the biggest.
Hello?
Hi, Mr. Davis. This is Ron calling from the Daily News. How are you doing this morning?
It's Davis, and I'm not interested.
Okay, I'm sorry to bother you. Have a nice day.
Wait a minute. Wait, that's your pitch? You consider that a sales call?
Well,
You know, I get a call from you guys every Saturday, and it's always the same half-assed attempt. If you guys want to close me, you should sell me.
all right.
All right, start again.
Okay. Hi. This is Ron from the Daily News. How are you doing this morning?
Shitty, what do you want?
It's not what I want, sir. It's what you want.
Ron, now we're talking. All right, what are you selling me?
I'm offering you a subscription to the Daily News at a substantially reduced price. We're trying to reach out to people that have never had home delivery before.
Right, so basically you're saying that everybody else who already has a subscription is getting on this one?
Yeah, I guess so.
All right, well, I can handle that. So tell me, why should I buy your paper? I mean, you know, why shouldn't I get the Times or the Voice, you know?
Well, the Village Voice is free, sir. So if you want it, you should certainly pick it up. But the Daily News offers you something no other paper can. A real taste of New York. We have the best features, more photographs than any other daily in New York, and we have the most reliable delivery in the city. Now, what do you think?
You know what I think, Ron? I think that was a sales call. Good job, buddy.
So you're going to buy a subscription?
No, I already get the Times.
So, one of my favorite examples of why you have to establish a power source. You know, it's a movie. It's somewhat farcical, but we see it in life every day. You know, the consultant goes out, he needs to sell something. What's he have? A great sales training program. Might be the greatest sales training program in the world. Might be the greatest leadership development or executive coaching or whatever in the world. But he shows up and throws up. He gets hold of somebody, gets him cornered, starts talking, and we like to think, you know what, I'm being casual. I'm asking about them. I'm listening. I'm asking. I'm listening. I'm asking. And the moment I have an opportunity that I can start talking about myself, I start telling them all the pros and cons of this or that or why they should need it and how it's going to help. And hey, man, it's the best thing. And could we meet next week and I can talk a little bit more and see if I can help your organization? And I just vomit up everything I can think about. The big problem? I didn't stop to figure out what the problem was for the person I'm talking to. In the video, he didn't need a newspaper because he already subscribes to one. The guy didn't stop to ask the question in the very beginning, Mr. Smith, do you currently get a newspaper? Is that a problem for you? That's the problem with cold calling. You don't care. You just dial enough people. Well, it's not a numbers game. There's an old myth. Sales is a numbers game. You must first establish the problem, and that's what we call the concrete power source. It is the most underemphasized step in almost every case. The key to it is when you ask them, then they're guiding it. They're telling you, if you listen, what you need to be focusing on. Of the millions of things that you may try to connect to, hey, how are sales for you guys? Do you guys have a great strategic plan? How effective are your teams? And when was the last time you did, team building? You're just stabbing in the wind. All you have to do is think and smartly ask, what's the problem with your life, Mr. Smith? How's business? How's the economy treating you? Yeah, what would you say your biggest problem is? I mean, you can figure out nice ways to do it tactfully. And what keeps you up at 2 o'clock at night? Share your own first. But if you get them into the discussion, identify the power source. When you identify that power source, please make sure you identify as many specifics as you can. Dollar amount. If you're going to put forth some cause down the road, I'd like to charge you $5,000 a month for 2 hours per week for this training program for this executive. And you can't put something equally as tangible on the other side of the scale. If you just go, well, you have some problem, poor leadership. All right, that's all I got. Let's talk about my solution. And I mean, Lord help me if it's 10,000, 50,000, 500,000. There's nothing on the other end of the scale that has any weight to it because it's just this intangible, ethereal kind of cloud of a problem that we haven't defined. I'm going to lose. It needs to be more like the right illustration, not the correct one. It is the correct one, but also to the right, not the left. I need to make sure that the weight behind my solution pales in comparison to the cost of the problem. So that's where the concrete power source really comes in. Not just the words they use, but flesh it out. How big a problem are we talking about financially and emotionally? Now that I know what the problem is, go into step 3, advance the hypothetical cause. Cause of the problem, okay, the power source. They need to be measurable competencies that cause the problem. I can't remember, like we said, hey, it sounds like your salespeople stink. How do I define that? I can't, it sounds like they got bad training. Again, how do I prove that? I can put forth that hypothesis. I think, previous training they got probably sucked. Well, whether it's leadership or customer service or whatever. One, I normally alienate the person I'm talking to because most likely they were involved in deciding on the previous training that I'm telling them was stupid. So you bought crappy stuff, Mr. Smith. Hey, that's the way to start a relationship. No, and I can't measure that. I can't go back and say, we did some analysis. It's just conjecture and opinion, and I need something tangible. So I put forth the cause like we discussed, and then I need to be able to say, okay, now we've got, 181 different things that we could measure for, Mr. Smith. I'm thinking off the top of my head, here's 3 or 4 that it sure sounds like to me. Maybe this, I don't know. So this is where you develop that library, if you will. When somebody says to me, they're not performing in sales, I'm able to say, well, there's 4 or 5 key characteristics that if they don't have them, they're going to struggle. I can get to a point now where I can say, well, let's learn more about the sale. So maybe it's an inbound, outbound, hunter-gatherer, farmer, what, and I can actually tailor that list of attributes that are very specific to those, but that's with experience. And in the DISC and values training, you'll pick up on a lot of those already. But I need to be able to say, I've got 3 or 4 things that I'm thinking drive effective leadership or customer service or whatever. And I'm wondering if they don't possess them. I'm wondering if those are absent. That creates the question, okay, how do I know? I actually diagnose that cause by giving them the profile. I'm confirming my suspicions, or at least presenting tangible proof of what I do find. Some people balk and go, well, I'll look stupid if I said, I think it's probably because they don't have one of these, and I come back and the profile proves me wrong, and they go, oh, they do have these. Trust me, you'll find something in every profile that's not optimal for some performance in some role. And so whether my experience is whether I come back and say, you know what, I was dead wrong, the 5 things I said it could be, it was none of them. They possess absolute brilliant talents in every one of those areas. As long as I then say, but there's 3 over here that also affect sales where they're really missing. They don't care. I've never had anybody go, ha, you were wrong, because they know it's hypothetical, as long as I can find something. And that brings us to the point where I'm able to show them, here's the cause of the problem. And as we know, he or she who identifies the cause of the problem then gets to fix it. And that leads me to step 5, and wrapping up this review, I negotiate the appropriate solution. I don't do a product demo. I don't talk to them about, here's all the stuff I got.
Let's say you're driving along the road with your family, and you're driving along, la la la, woo. Then all of a sudden there's a truck tire in the middle of the road, and you hit the brakes. Whoa, that was close. Now let's see what happens when you're driving with the other guy's brake pads. You're driving along, and all of a sudden the kids are yelling from the back seat, I gotta go to the bathroom, Daddy. Not now, damn it. Truck tire. I can't stop. Help! There's a cliff. And your family's screaming, oh my God, we're burning alive. No, I can't feel my legs. Here comes a meat wagon. And the medic gets out and says, oh my God. New guy's in the corner puking his guts out. All because you want to save a couple extra pennies. And to me, it doesn't.
Get out. Now. Do you validate? No.
Okay, thank you.
Never do a product demo. Okay, avoid it. What happens the moment the person says, so what do you recommend? And you roll into product demo mode. Well, let's talk about my sales training program and why it's so great. Don't sell it. The physician doesn't say, let me do a product demo on the surgery. Here's why it's awesome and here's why you need it. Don't go into sales mode at the very last moment, because it's the last place where that tendency tends to show up. They asked. Now, finally, I can put on my sales cap and start to sell them. And you did all that work just to kill it in the end. You'll never want to put on that sales cap. Stay the consultant, always be coaching, always be consulting. And when they ask, how do I fix it? In step 5, when you're showing them your results, do a light sales debrief of their profile. Don't go into the sales mode. Don't do a demo of, well, sales this, management that. And just answer their question. Okay, 15, 30 minutes through the entire profile, max. More often than not, that's going to be 5 or 10 minutes. Connect the dots. And by that I mean, when you say, see this score and it's very low, you can't stop there. You have to connect the dots. The two dots are cause and effect. So cause is, this is a very low score in this area. Effect, that's going to mean that they're probably not very aggressive when it comes to prospecting, knocking on doors, and hunting. Cause, well, see this score here? Political in the values dimension is 7th place. Don't stop there. Connect the dot to the effect, the problem, the symptom that the person you're talking to is going to see. And that, Mr. Smith, is likely to cause them to actually not be big on taking charge. They're not really comfortable or passionate about leading. So, they're in a leadership role and we're wondering why they're not doing so well. This right here says that it's not a huge motivation for them. They don't feel comfortable grabbing the reins and having everybody rely on them. And then what you're really doing is eliciting buy signs. But in this role, buy signs are questions. When somebody says, what do you recommend? How are we going to fix that? Where do we go from here? What could we do? What are others doing? These are all buy signs. When you hear that, simply make your recommendation. I'd recommend we put them into our sales training program. I'd recommend you let me do some coaching with them. I'd recommend. All depends on what it is that you have to offer and who the prospect is and what the problem is. The only thing you can't lose from selling is that you have to finally give them a call to action. If I give them no request for action, I get no action. And so if there's one thing from selling that does stay, it's only the title of call to action, not the traditional selling call to action. And you have to keep that one. You have to stop and say, so here's my recommendation. And you don't just make the recommendation, get up and say, all right, well, give me a call if you ever make your decision. Make the call to action of, all right, well, now that I've said, here's what I'd recommend, why don't we go ahead and get them signed up? Why don't we go ahead and talk about what that'll take? Why don't you let me write up that final proposal to review everything we just discussed here, and I'll submit it into you and we can talk about it again next Tuesday. Must make a call to action to actually squeeze the trigger and get it to go. No call to action, no action. So connect the dots, identify the problems, hand them the report won't do anything. You've got to make sure that you connect everything to the problem they're seeing. And when you do it right, when you induce them to come to you, when you establish that concrete power source first, then move to advancing a hypothetical cause, then move to recommending a diagnostic profile to see whether you're right or wrong, and then showing them the cause and waiting on them to say, or bringing it up yourself if you have to on rare occasion, how do we fix that? Make your recommendation, give them the actual call to action, and it's yours. You've earned the business when you do it this way. That's the diagnostic sales process, and that's why using profiles as sales tools to actually get business, or as business development tools if you want to call it that, works so effectively. Burn your sales cap. Don't keep it off. Don't put it in the shelf. Burn it. You're never going to need it again. Get your coaching or consulting head out, and that's the only one you'll ever wear. So stop looking for people to sell to. Start looking for problems to solve. Induce people to come to you every day. Put an article out, make a blog, do a podcast, seek to speak somewhere. Okay, that's the volume we're talking about. Identify the problems when they come to you. Diagnose it with profiles. Connect the dots between what you see in the profiles to what they're seeing in reality. And when they ask, how do we fix it? Make your recommendation. Squeeze that trigger and close it. So go take your profiles, look at them again. So that's the diagnostic sales process. Review this again, take some notes, give it a shot, see what you can think. Inducing them to come to you is going to take a little while, but the very next person you talk to, see if you can start with steps 2 through 5, and you watch how different you feel about it. You watch how differently they react. Thanks.